I had to work so hard in that class. I have my notes from it still. They got a little wet one day about how to heart attack. I've not read them. I'm not going back to that, but I have it.
In the stone, the chiseled.
It is. I could actually do like cookies on them, you know, to recreate that knowledge transfer. You can have it for your extension programs.
Amanda and Haley, we are so excited to feature you on This Is Purdue. Thank you for joining us. We've got a very unique setup, so we're very happy to have you both. Tell us a little bit about your research and what you both do at Purdue.
So my research is mostly food safety related, and I really focus on produce, but we do a little bit of everything. So I work a lot with extension. I work with produce growers throughout the state of Indiana, and really help with anything food safety related. So it can be from produce to other products that emerging food entrepreneurs are doing, you name it.
Yeah. I think we wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be a consistent theme as we look at what food safety is and how we engage with that here at Purdue. But Haley Oliver, 150th anniversary professor of food science. So I have a lot of history in teaching and really enjoy that. But on the research side, also focus on food safety. We'll call it historically, or in my domestic research program, we focus on food safety at retail or post-manufacturing. So anything you need to know about a grocery store, just let me know. And one of my other hats is directing the USAID Feed the Future Food Safety Innovation Lab, where we take our understanding of food safety and help developing economies apply those practices where it's important to them.
So we do a lot of the same things, just in little different applications, I guess you would say.
Okay. I read that you both grew up on farms too, so you have that in common. So was this always, was food always really interesting to you? How did you kind of forge this career path?
Yeah, it's interesting. So yes, I grew up in a farm in Michigan. And we always grew our own food, a lot of our own food anyway. But I went to college to actually work more in the medical field, and I quickly learned that animals and humans were not my forte to learn about or to try to understand. So but really found my niche in microbiology and plants in general. So I did a master's degree in plant biology, and then I did my PhD in food microbiology. So I kind of put those two things together, and that's how I started working in this fresh produce food safety field. And so far, it's been a great ride, and working with Extension has been a privilege, and I thoroughly enjoy working with all of our Indiana stakeholders.
Yeah, I think another thing we have in common is we're first-generation college students. Sure. And so I know when I started college, I started off as a communication major. That obviously didn't work out.
Because we had it all planned out.
Yeah,
right?
It was a big plan. But you have these things like university core curricula, and I needed to take another biology class, and that happened to be microbiology, and I fell in love with it. And that's not common, I guess. But anyway, but I wanted to stay connected to agriculture. Yes, did grow up in a production farm in Wyoming, and I think exposure, it's kind of interesting how you ran away from the human side. What intrigued me was the human pathogen side and how you could make this microbiology relevant, but to humans. And then I still wanted to stay somehow connected to agriculture. So food microbiology is kind of the sweet spot for being able to do that.
And what led you both to Purdue?
I actually came to Purdue to work on plants, more plants. And as I started, I was like, this just isn't what I really wanted to do. And food science just reached out to me. And just I wasn't really even familiar with the field of food science. But everything, it was so applied, and there was so many job opportunities, and that's what we always tell our undergrads. Somebody's always going to have to make food. People need to eat, right? And just the opportunities to be in that field. And it worked. I could actually still work with bacteria. I could still work with plants and stay in that field of food microbiology. So I think that's kind of how I came about. And again, it kept me connected to agriculture. And it was just a natural fit.
I needed a job. No,
That too.
we all eventually need one of those, it turns out. But yeah, I'd finished my degree at Cornell in food science. But yeah, and good point on what is food science and how do you find that? Because it can mean a lot of things at the surface, but it's really a huge collection of disciplines from food production, processing, safety, chemistry, sensory. We have many disciplines within that house. But I didn't have a plan, as many people I think finish their PhD still run into that of the what next.
Right.
When you have opportunities with industry, government, or stay in academia. And I was kind of operating under the philosophy that I'd give academia a try because you can always step away. And so there was an opportunity here in 2010 to join the faculty, and I was lucky enough to be selected for that position. Wow, 13 years ago.
I know, right? But I think people think food science like we cook.
Right.
I mean, we cook.
We do cook.
Let's dig in. What is food science? What do you think is the most important thing for people to know about it?
But what I love about food science, it's like what Haley just said. It's chemistry, it's microbiology, it's engineering, it's packaging. All this goes into making a food product. And so we are an interdisciplinary program, and we have to be, and that's the cool part to me.
Right.
So my office is next door to a chemist, and then the next door down is an engineer. I love that. And so it's not like we're all just working on the same thing, but we all have our specialized areas, and it all comes together then to help the food industry in general.
And I think the piece of the discussion where food science is going to really play a role looking forward is in sustainability.
Yep.
We have increasing population. We have climate change. How are we going to produce enough food and efficiently? Food science is a major part of that discussion where we look at how much is lost, how much is wasted from primary production, manufacturing, and retail level. I try not to have my house be the place where fruit goes to die, but it's a risk. But how do we prevent that? And food science is a big part of that discussion.
So what are some of the initiatives within Purdue, the food science department that, are helping combat, world hunger and food safety issues and sustainability?
Alternative proteins, I think that's the next big thing. And I think our department, we've really are aligning ourselves to be a major player in that alternative protein space. We just got a new extruder that we can actually use to produce some of these alternative protein products. So, think insects, soy, any of those products. And I think that's the next, in my opinion anyway, that's the next big thing in food science.
Yeah, and kind of space that we're working in now is maybe integrated systems. One of our colleagues has a program looking at fruit, vegetable production and aquaculture. So how do you do nutrient cycling, energy cycling, life cycle assessment for those types of systems? Food safety, I think the way I boil it down and how it fits into the discussion of food security, sustainability, if it's not safe, it's not food. End of story.
Right.
Like we can't have our food doing harm from a chemical or microbiological standpoint. So as we move into new foods, or it could be even cellular agriculture, so lab-grown products, that still has to be safe. But we also need, as we try to increase and shift the narrative of what the American or Western diet looks like, more fruits and vegetables, those also have to be safe for us to actually achieve some of those nutritional outcomes.
And Haley, you talked about going into the grocery store and like what's safe, what to look out for. What is something that might be, something that our listeners, our viewers don't know about food safety that they should maybe start paying attention to?
Wow. A grocery store is a fascinating place, right? It's
I always get the, can I help you, ma'am?
Yeah,
in the
that's
produce
true.
section.
Yeah, because we're always just sitting around, standing, looking at like grocery store stalkers, I suppose. Like, why are you loitering? Well, just taking a look at what? No. I think being aware, I would say, of how produce is handled. Okay. We often have people rifling through produce looking for something that's high quality or meets that aesthetic property that you might have as your ideal. thanks for touching all of that.
Yeah.
It's like,
For me.
do you ever pick the first cantaloupe in the bin that you touch? Probably
No,
not.
no.
No. And so probably the other 50 people don't pick the first one they touch too. So that's the thing, I think, from a food safety perspective in the produce aisle, you don't only have what could have come from the farm, but you also have what was on the hands of the 50 people or plus that touched that item before you purchase it, right? So, that just drives our growers, insane, because they said we do everything we can do, but now we have, all these.
tampering.
It goes into the public sphere, and that's not to say you need to be panicking and worrying at that level of oh my gosh, every product X is dangerous now. That's not the case, but it's interesting. I think if you would survey people in a grocery store, your average consumer, getting into the discussion of safety and quality, that there's often confusion between those two terms. Quality is appearance, taste. Could even, some houses would include nutrition within that, but that doesn't have anything to do with safety. Things like salmonella, our good friend salmonella, E. coli, those don't actually destroy your food. They don't spoil your food. None of the characteristics of your food, like slimy lettuce, for example, it's not them. Those are spoilage organisms, and spoilage organisms, well beyond 90% of them, don't cause disease. And so the groups that are reducing your quality, the organisms that are destroying quality, have nothing to do with safety. And that's a major confusion and a big contributor to waste.
Yeah. Well, and actually, though, the more spoilage bacteria or microorganisms that are there, the fewer the pathogens, because they outcompete the pathogens. So it's probably actually, from a food safety standpoint, the slimy lettuce is probably
might have an edge.
Yeah, right.
Except for it doesn't have an edge.
No.
It allows stirrer pressure.
Tell us more about the food sustainability part and why that's a key initiative within Purdue's College of Agriculture.
I think we've been talking about that for a long time. I think that's on the College of Ag, that's been on our radar for many, many years. And, it's a growing population, and we work with the people that are supplying the food for that population, right? And we need to have enough. And so, like Haley said, just thinking about efficiency and how we can reuse resources and, different alternative proteins, things like that, is all going to play into it. So I don't know. I think since I've been in the college, that's been key.
It has, and I think that the narrative I would say that the narrative on it has expanded to what sustainability means. If you look at agriculture here at Purdue, or what the college focuses on, it ranges from small growers, specialty crops, which are displayed here, which are human consumption, all the way to commodity corn, soybean, and proteins, chicken and pork. We represent this massive continuum of agriculture, and so the strength of the college, faculty, staff, extension here, is that we have expertise in that range. And so coming together, especially interdisciplinary, like food science, like many of the departments here in the college, it takes that collected expertise to move the needle on more resilient crops, on better food processing. We're food processing, that term even gets a bad rap, but we have to process food at this has all been processed by definition. We have to do that in order to actually achieve our sustainability goals.
Well, and I think that's what we always, at least when I work with stakeholders, I may not have the answer, but the College of Agriculture as a whole, like Haley said, there's experts all over. We can find that answer. And I think that's always the cool part. It may not be exactly what I do, but I can find somebody in the college that can answer those questions.
That's how you get to be number 3 in the country
Yes.
and number 5 in the world.
Yep.
And on our way up, I do believe.
So how does this research being done right here at Purdue impact the world?
I mean, I think it's part of what we do is get that information out.
Right.
And what Haley and I do a lot of international work. And so it's education, it's doing trainings, it's doing workshops, it's working with different stakeholders and different industries throughout the world, and that's how you do change it. That's, like she said, that's how you move the needle, is getting that information and just being good at disseminating it. And I think us as a college in general, we're very good at that.
Yeah, I mean, we are, I think, a prime example of what a land-grant university is and how it operates. And you know, Amanda and I have had the pleasure of traveling all over the world,
right,
to look at agriculture systems, food production systems. But what remains kind of uniquely American, we'll call it that, and the Moral Act, is the creation of the land-grant system, where you bring together teaching, research, and extension and engagement. So yes, you have the investment in the infrastructure to ask the hard questions that may not be funded otherwise. Mm-hmm. So how do you improve safety? How do you improve production, resiliency, breeding, all the way to forestry, obviously, here in the college? You can do that research, but it has to get to the end user. Yep. And that's the importance of extension. And of course, we're the land grant of the state of Indiana, so teaching, developing next generation, you know, investigators and employees. It's what we do. Yep. And I think it, exactly. Again, kind of uniquely American, but I think one of the most important investments and pieces of policy that was ever written in this country.
What does it mean to you to be teaching, you know, these next generation students and for this many years?
Yeah, old lady.
Yeah, exactly. But it's what we do. That's the exciting part, right? You are training that next person to go into industry, to run the Kellogg's, to run the Pepsi's, to run the Nestle's of the world, right? And even I still even work with a lot of students who want to go into small farming operations. Mm-hmm. And that's exciting too, right? Their dream is to farm 5 acres, and they're going to do that. And but we're here to help that. Right. So I think we do everything from the small scale up into these big corporate companies of the world. And I think that to me is exciting.
It's always fun to start off the fall by reading what parts of our lived experience the freshmen haven't had, right? So what year would they have been born this year? Oh,
they all had internet.
Yeah, we were probably in college. Yeah, they've had the internet, and we were in college. Not good for anybody those years. But it's a nice benchmark, I guess, personally. You know, who is your client? Mm-hmm. What do they know? What is their lived experience? What are they interested in? And sustainability, we know, is a big theme around what our current students are excited and interested in, and alternative proteins. Mm-hmm. If you'd rewind the clock, I think, back to when we became faculty members 10 years ago, that narrative was slightly different. You know, our students were kind of headed for what I call it big food, but like the bigger companies that are established. And I think Amanda made the point that the narrative's changed. We still have students that we have near 100% placement of our domestic students out of food science when you graduate within 6 months, like you have a job. But the range of their jobs and what they're doing has changed in the last 10 years. And I think the nice part about that, one, we have to change as a society, but it helps us keep up too. Yeah. Like we're not stuck. Food doesn't let you be stuck in a space, I think.
Nope. Well, and I think people in general, they want to know more about their food. They want to know the ingredients that are going in there. They want to know where it was processed. They're asking those questions. And so that makes us then have to step up our game to make sure that those consumers know that information. So yeah, it's always evolving.
It doesn't stop. There's always some surprise in food.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah, what's a good example of, 15 years ago, people, like, for example, I grew up eating like fruit roll-ups and all the processed stuff. And now I'm like, to my parents, what were you thinking?
I love fruit roll-ups.
I know.
I love having them in every tube.
It was very like meat and potatoes, and there was none of the organic, and the people weren't as worried about that. So why do you think that keeps evolving, or do you have any examples of your own when it comes to that?
I mean, I think it is that whole people are reading labels.
Yeah.
They want to know what's in their food.
Access, yeah.
They want to know local has become a huge thing. I mean, local is kind of weird how it's sometimes defined by 100 miles
Or 400
or
miles.
the same state or in the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
geographic
has a
region. Yeah.
Flexibility on
Right. But that's where people are looking to buy their food more and more. And I think with the pandemic, that actually heightened all of that. So we saw, even though a lot of the farmers markets were shutting down, the demand for people to buy local increased. And so these were coming back. Once those farmers markets came back to being that people could attend them, they saw numbers much higher than that they were prior to the pandemic. So I think that's going to keep going. That's one trend.
Yeah, that certainly, and I won't dwell on clean label too much, but can you read the ingredients?
Right.
Preservatives, are they functional? And I think that's really driven by information access and consumers. Of course, I think it's important to note, in this country, we don't spend that much of our disposable income on food. And because we don't, that gives us a lot of bandwidth for choice. And that isn't necessarily something that you see in the developing economies that we work in globally. Doesn't mean they still don't have concerns like around food safety. They absolutely do. But when you have the economic buying power that many American consumers do, that's how you get into broader choice.
Yep.
When you talk about the developing economies and the food safety and what you all are doing, over there, are there any specific examples or programs that you want to highlight for our listeners?
Well, some of the work we're doing in Peru is they're trying to change or make a shift from coca production that a lot of, especially this is in the Amazon, the highlands of the Amazon jungle. They're trying to get them away from coca production and turning to alternative crops. So one thing that we're doing, one, is to train them how to grow these crops safely, following good agricultural practices, but then also how to transform them into something they can actually make money selling.
Yeah.
So they're adding value to it. So instead of just selling, cocoa beans, they're going to turn it into chocolate. And so they've had some success already doing that, but we're working on a lot of just trying to help them make more money. And we'll see. We're in year 2. We have a few more years left. But I think it's things like that. It's education is huge. And people will do exactly what you train them to do. They just don't know at the time what are some of those food safety issues. So I think that's one thing that, you and I have been doing for many years in different countries, working with food manufacturers and growers and everything in between, just to help improve food safety.
Okay.
I think you bring up, a good point of what drives a lot of what people will do or what they can do. There's no escaping the economics piece of it. If it doesn't make financial sense, if changing a system of production or processing, if those costs can't be either absorbed by the producer or transferred to the consumer, that's going to be a barrier. I think as we work internationally, I think you see it too, that actually the biggest barrier to behavior change, which is what this is all about at the end of the day, is awareness. If we step outside of the United States, the vast majority of consumers and concerns are founded in what we call chemical hazards, pesticide residue, aflatoxins, things that are rightfully a concern, heavy metals as well. However, if we look at what the data say in the United States and globally, the greatest risk are microbiological hazards. Why do I think that is? You can see people apply pesticides. You can see application of some of these products. Heavy metal, metal's a tangible thing. Guess what's not so tangible? Salmonella, right? You can't see that thing very well unless it's on a plate. And so, without education, it becomes more a leap of faith in a way,
Right.
that you have some invisible thing on, maybe produce X or in poultry that can actually do serious harm. So elevating awareness of what's actually causing the vast majority of disease globally is hurdle number one, at least from my lens and the Food Safety Innovation Lab.
Well, and we worked with a company in Chicago that was importing saffron from Afghanistan.
Okay.
And so they were rejecting about half of the shipments because they were all contaminated with human pathogens, so E. coli, salmonella, things like that. So what we did was actually go and train their workers, so it was their harvest crews and the people doing the processing. We trained them, just a training, on good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices. And the following year, they didn't reject one shipment.
Wow.
So it just goes to show that training goes a long way. And it's not that people don't want to do the right thing.
It's just it's awareness.
Right. they're not aware what the right thing is.
They
As long as
don't
it's
know what they
economically
don't know.
viable.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. How would you say Purdue is directly contributing to ending world hunger? I know you talked about the proteins. You can expand on that, or anything else that you'd want to talk about when it comes to that?
Like I said, the college, I think this has been on our radar.
World Food Prize winners.
Yeah,
Major
that's true.
contributors.
We have 2 World Food Prize winners. I mean, that's kind of the Nobel Prize in the food world. We have 2 of them in the College of Agriculture. And again, most of it was how to transport food.
Innovation in food.
Yeah, how to transport food better, how to grow food, different varieties better. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's part of the legacy of the College of Agriculture. I do, to your point on alternative proteins and in joint interest across many colleges, but primarily agriculture and engineering, we have an increased interest and definitely an increased presence in what's called cellular agriculture, so cell-based. So I hate to call it lab-grown because it's not much of a lab; it'd be food processing, really. But growing
in lab grown, it just sounds gross.
lab grown does sound a little tough. I mean, the salmonella grows in the lab too, but how do we grow more food using different food systems? Because protein demand is going to remain the challenge, and that is not to be. I don't see it at odds with our traditional conventional agriculture, because a number of the inputs that we already produce are going to be inputs into systems like cellular agriculture. So, Purdue's at the edge of the next thing, but also has this amazing track record of how we continue to get to do the next big thing.
Yeah, but I think we're always encouraged too. I mean, through different funding opportunities through the college, we're encouraged to try new things and look for different solutions, and just from the college in general. So I think it's a very supportive atmosphere.
It is, and I think, and you can see this across the university, but our commitment to innovation. Yeah, that's rooted in the College of Agriculture, very much a part of how we operate as well. So it's valuing that like we value fundamental research or excellence in teaching, and extension is a great thing, and I think it sets Purdue apart from a number of institutions of our land-grant colleagues, where we put innovation really as a part of our thread, as a part of what we value.
That's what this research series is all about. So on those same lines, what would happen if Purdue, if you two weren't doing this type of research?
Maybe more deaths, no. Again, so what I do mostly with extension, my job really came about because the produce industry, so we had the 2012 outbreak with the cantaloupe and salmonella, and that devastated the industry. And the industry basically as a whole said, we need someone at Purdue that does produce food safety, and that's how my job came about. And so I'd like to think anyway, that our growers in Indiana would have they wouldn't have that support.
They'd have more
system.
risk.
Yeah, there'd be more risk and less support. And because we'll do anything with them. I mean, we come out and do farm visits, we work one-on-one with them. If there's some research that they want, like looking at a new sanitizer treatment, we'll do that research for them, do those experiments to see how well this sanitizer kills bacterial pathogens or not. We try to be everything to the industry that we can be. And so I guess I would like to think there'd be more risk if we weren't doing what we do.
Yeah. I think when I was hired at Purdue in 2010, I was hired as a primary teaching appointment, which was a big leap, actually, for me, coming from, a background of sequencing genomes. But it's being able to teach and have that knowledge transfer piece. I found, I think, over time that was something that I could do at least moderately well. But our opportunities, so where does Purdue benefit maybe from what we do, or how are we reducing risk? Because we do so much research for development or international development and have both a very domestic presence and experience of what is going on here in the Midwest, but also in some of the remote corners of the world,
Right.
in economies that are up and coming. We can bring those experiences together. Learned experiences in Indiana agriculture is translatable to production in Cambodia. There is translation there. But what we can then do with those experiences to bring back to the classroom makes us much more effective. So
Absolutely.
probably bottom line, the utilities in the classroom of like a true measurable difference, because that's how we can really spend a lot of quality time with our clients as students, and share, or affect how they think about food safety going forward.
And I think just when we're in the classroom, we talk about we tell these stories, we talk about what we do in these countries. And I teach this, it's for incoming freshmen, just women in agriculture class. So it's their first semester at Purdue. They're in the College of Ag. There's usually about 40-some women in there. And the first thing I do is say, you need to do a study abroad. Here's how you apply for the scholarships for the study abroad. And here's the places I worked and what we've done. And I think they're all fired up to do it. And I think most of our students in the department all do some sort of study abroad.
Yeah,
most of them anyway.
Pre-pandemic, I think
Yeah,
the College of Agriculture undergrads, it was almost 40%
Yes.
did study
Wow.
abroad. And I know we're working hard to get students back to that level, because it is important to have a more global perspective.
Yeah.
We do not just live within the confines of Purdue, of Tippecanoe County, of Indiana, or even the country. So getting out there, taking risk, helping people take that leap, or what might be perceived as risk, help them get through that, I think is important. And I guess I would even say part of that, being first generation college students, we know what that first dipping your toe into academia looks like. So I haven't forgotten what that's like, and how you see students come in that are surprised.
Probably look like us.
Yeah. I'm surprised I don't have
Deer in the
potting
headlights.
soil on my face
Right.
today. It is that part of
But
of
I grew
summer.
up an hour, 45 minutes to an hour from the nearest Walmart. Like I grew up in the middle of nowhere,
Wow.
so it's not
I'm with
like
you.
Yeah, we didn't grow up in a place where you were, you went to India, you worked in Peru, you worked in Cambodia, right?
Sure.
We didn't. That wasn't our everyday.
This wasn't my plan either. It
Right.
wasn't on my radar,
But that's the opportunities that come into a place like Purdue
Yeah.
gives people. Those opportunities are there. Whether you want to take them or not is up to you, but we certainly encourage everyone to take those opportunities and give it a try.
I love that. That's a great perspective. I want to get into both of your separate programs and initiatives that you work on. So Haley, you talked about the Feed the Future Safety Innovation Lab. What are those labs' main goals? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think the first thing we have to demystify is that it's not a lab.
Okay.
It's a silly term. It makes it sound like we have a facility. It's not. And what it is, it's a collective of researchers domestically in the United States, and then their global university and industry partners coming together to work on food safety challenges, usually in a specific commodity or subsector of the food industry where they want to see improvements. And so as director, I have the pleasure of directing and guiding the research portfolio for the Food Safety Innovation Lab, which is a U.S. State Department investment in food safety. Why do we do that? Food safety ties back to food security. It's a part of the fundamental definition of it. It has to be safe or nutritious. You have to have enough of it. It has to get to the population that needs it. And if it's not safe, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So those four things coming together are really the foundation of the research that we work on. And the more we get into it, the more we continue to focus on awareness. This is a taxpayer dollar investment. And so what I care about is that we're using it, one, for good, do no harm, but elevate awareness in the challenges that are the greatest. And in this instance, when it comes to food and food safety, it's microbiology. As unfun and underwhelming as that might seem to many populations, bacteria are a big challenge. And so we invest in elevating awareness, which to the long game, what does it do? You have more people that better understand the challenge, which can then fundamentally affect policy. Because in most instances, you have to have regulations and policy in order to affect some change. They're called push-pull models, but on the industry or private sector side, you can have an interest in food safety because you're trying to reach higher value markets. And so other people's regulations maybe stop you. Kind of that example with the saffron, you couldn't import because it didn't meet quality and safety standards. So we work at that interface of US researchers partnering with in-country researchers, 14 US universities, 14 in-country universities and private sector partners coming together to work on my favorite topic, food safety.
And microbiology was the class you fell in love with in
It
school?
was. I had to work so hard in that class. I have my notes from it still. They got a little wet one day about had a heart attack. I've not read them. I'm not going back to that, but I have it.
In the stone, the chiseled.
It is. I could actually do like cookies on them, to recreate that knowledge transfer. You can have it for your extension programs.
Exactly.
It was just the hardest class. I was equally challenged by my interpersonal communication class. I had no idea what any of the definitions meant. I was like, I got to get out. This doesn't make any sense to me. So I went over to microbiology, and that's where I found my love. But yeah, it was hard. It was a challenge, but you could see, you're like, this is fascinating because they were unknown to me.
Right.
And it was a little still leap of faith, if you will, until you got into the lab. Why active learning, experiential learning is so a big theme at Purdue and why we do it, because I needed to see those.
Right.
Exactly.
And it was the biochemical tests and memorizing all of that. If you asked me to memorize that today, it would take 16 years. But back then, when it was all sharp and fresh, that was my joy. That was my love. Do we do it anymore today? No. All the joys died from that. But it was motivational at the time. It changed every decision I made about a career from there forward. But yeah, I've got my green. Dr. Isaac, can't forget.
What is your proudest moment as director of Feed the Future, or any other exciting stories, concrete examples of things you all have done there?
Wow. We have a lot of things that I can be excited about, but I think one is that we began the Innovation Lab. It became a Purdue contracted. It's in partnership with Cornell. We do things differently in our Innovation Lab, and I think part of it is because we are not lifers of international development. We're relatively new to it, so we bring a different lens. We don't have historical approaches, which I think actually contributes to our innovation. So it's not just at Purdue, it's not just at a single university like most innovation labs. We partner with Cornell. So we have joint management, which means we can tap into the resources of both institutions. Shocking, right? It's a good idea to be able to bring that kind of bench to the table. So I like that we do things differently. We started in August of 2019, which means we have done all of this work through a pandemic, and we've still been able to meet our goals. We've still produced meaningful research, but it's about having the right partnerships, people that know how to navigate, transatlantic, trans-Pacific relationships. And oh my gosh, thank goodness for platforms like Zoom.
Yeah,
Right.
I remember the first in-person meeting. I was like, man, I thought you were a lot taller than that, because I had never met most of the people who were part of it in person.
Yeah.
We're just on Zoom.
It's amazing the images you built on this two-dimensional
They probably thought,
space.
man, you were so much shorter than I thought you were.
Mine's always like, oh, you are old. No, I'm kidding. Huh.
And Cornell is where you went to school, right?
It is.
So what is it like working hand in hand with your alma mater?
Oh, it's a lovely thing. It's the land grant University of New York as well, and so we have common goals. And when I look, I don't have any like hard facts for you, but if we look at the distribution of agriculture in New York and Indiana, they're different, and I think it contributes to a non-competitive space.
Sure.
Our colleges are different, but so complementary. And I suppose we kind of joke, but not really. Why did we include them on their team so they wouldn't compete? No, bring together two of the most influential and productive colleges of agriculture together. Why not? It's just good resource management, but also joy. Faculty, that I knew, as a student, to be able to then work in a relationship with them as colleagues, there's just no better joy. And I think, like most things in agriculture, it's a lot about who you know and who's in your network. And I think communicating that to our students is so important.
Sure.
Yeah. Network.
So Amanda, you told us a little bit about the Peru Hub project. Any favorite stories from that specific initiative?
Anything with the jungle.
Yeah. No, it's been really good. And we've really worked hard to include women and Indigenous populations with the trainings that we do. And, they are like sponges. They just want to learn. And we've worked with a lot of chocolate manufacturers in that area. And it's very interesting to see other developmental projects have been around there and helped them get to where they are now, but it's very interesting. They all produce exactly the same looking chocolate bar, the same recipe, the same packaging. So it's like, so we're working on the marketing side to help them make a fancier package so you can compete. Be different.
Okay.
And so I think that's that's been the cool part, just working with that and us literally just trying to figure out what are some new products we can make. So we have people working at Purdue in food science, how to turn passion fruit into something that's not currently in their market. So we've been working with students to do passion fruit butter. What can they make that's different and new that even the Peru people would support and purchase those products, or could it be for export? So both those things have been probably the most interesting and fun part of that project.
I think, I'm glad I forgot, as I do, as I age here, right? Gender, it's a big part of the innovation lab as well. And why do we think about that? It's because in many cultures, women make the decisions around food and even production, or a big part of production. And so if they haven't been included in the discussion or continuing education, you're leaving out the labor force and deciders, and that's not how you move the needle.
I would have never thought about that.
That's how Afghanistan was too. I mean, when we started working there, we were training all men. The men did not grow any of the food. They didn't harvest any of the food. They didn't cook any of the food.
They ate the food.
But they ate the food, but yet that's who we were training. And so during that project time, we increased the number of women about 80%. We were doing then women-only training, and that was when you could really have those discussions with women. Because if they were in a group with men that were present, they wouldn't talk. They wouldn't say anything. But when they were by themselves, they would ask questions, they were involved, they were engaged. And so, that's a huge part of targeting that right population. And it's in most countries, it's surprising the amount that women do related to food.
That makes total sense. That's super interesting. Do you have a certain moment with the Purdue Extension Food Safety Training Hub that really sticks out to you, or a story from a student who came back to you? And
this is where persistence gets you somewhere with the Food Safety Training Hub. So I had this idea for years and years before, and I would work with all these growers, and I said, if I just had a space where I could show this equipment, I could do these demonstrations with them, show them how to use this equipment, it would be fantastic. And so I just kind of, it's like the little gnat at the barbecue. I just kept it up.
Like a sugar ant.
Yes, I just kept saying it, and sure enough, so I don't know what year was that? 2019. It was right before the pandemic. I think November or before, so maybe 2018. Is when all the stars aligned, and we worked with VU, Vincennes University, and they were building a building, and it just worked out. And we got money through FDA and the Department of Health to build that facility. So that's one, example of where persistence pays off, or being annoying. I don't know how.
It's like there's a lot of words we could use.
Yeah.
A lot of
but I just kept saying it, and finally says yes, we need to have this. So it's amazing space down there. We've worked with a lot of growers. We've hosted trainings from the North Central region. So the 13, 14 states that make up the North Central region have come there. Regulatory people from FDA, their Department of Ags, their Department of Health, growers, extension people. We've hosted trainings there. So this has been a great collaboration, and something I'm very glad it happened, and we're very appreciative of our collaboration with VU.
Are there any goals that you're working on now to achieve within the extension?
Yeah, we just keep on. It's kind of things cycle, right?
Sure.
So we get a lot of growers, they're trying to do these audits so they can sell to different markets. We help them through that. Really, but like I say, we always try to be the one-stop shop. And so you come to us, we always say, this is our job, this is what we get paid to do, use us. And we do training, so we train a lot of growers in good ag practices, and that last thing we always say is, this shouldn't be the last time we talk. Really, we're a resource, and they take us up on it, which is great. So, no, we just keep going. We just pray we have no outbreaks with produce in Indiana. That's our
yeah, but that's the thing. Amanda works in a preventive space.
Yes.
We try not to have reactions to contamination,
Yes.
And that's really kind of at the heart of everything you do with growers.
Through education, prevention through education is a lot of it.
And if you look at foodborne disease trends for the last 10 to 15 years, it does look like that produce has really increased in the number of outbreaks. And that may be true, but it also is complicated by the fact that our technology for detection, time to detection, ability to define an outbreak has improved dramatically through technologies like whole genome sequencing. So have the problems always been there? Probably. But does it look like we're having whether it's emerging pathogens, emerging disease associated with produce? Like we didn't always, I remember in a grant review of mine, we had a vested interest, submitted a USDA proposal several years ago, like a lot of years ago, like 12, that was proposing to update the likelihood of Listeria, which is a pathogen I've worked on for a lot of years, Listeria monocytogenes in produce. One of the comments from the reviewers back literally said we were on a witch hunt. That was nice to see as a new faculty member. You're like, oh, so we're crazy. Good. Yeah. And then what happens in 2011? Cantaloupe is at the heart of one of the most deadly listeriosis outbreaks in the country. And what do we see? Things changing over time. Not necessarily change, but because we have technology and more information and able to synthesize that information, we see that disease is attributed to produce.
Yeah. When Haley and I are both members of the Center for Food Safety Engineering, that's here at Purdue, and that's really what the center does. Is we're the microbiologists, but we work with engineers that they're developing these new, better detection methods. Because again, it's all how few bacteria can you detect and how quickly can you detect it.
Time.
That's what
Time
the
to
focus
detection.
is. So
Yep.
we're kind of the support team. We're not the engineers.
We're the boots on the ground of the micro
Right.
team.
So we help them, but test out what they
Sure.
design. But I think that is a cool partnership that has helped develop these detection methods for the industry.
So I want to go back to some Purdue memories. You both seem very fond of Purdue. What role would you say Purdue has played in your life?
Oh. Yeah, I did my PhD here, so I've unfortunately been here for quite a long time. Sometimes it's scary. I think it's coming up in 20 years now.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I think I was from an agricultural world. Right? I grew up in a farm, small town, and then I spent however many years in a lab, right, doing research on my degrees.
In the dark.
In the dark,
sunlight.
yeah, right, no sunlight. But then I came back, so when I came here to do my PhD, and especially after I graduated, I came back to agriculture. And that to me was, it was just I think it was always destined to happen. It's like I almost tried to get away from agriculture in a sense, but then it just pulled me right back in. And so it's totally been a pleasure working with all the growers throughout the state. We go around and give talks. I love going to meet alumni. And even when I travel internationally, I almost always wear a Purdue shirt. And it's amazing. I think pretty much every country I've been in, someone will come up to me and said, I did my undergrad at Purdue. I was even in India, in Bangalore, and was invited. They found out I was there and was invited to do an alumni event. And because there was a whole bunch of computer science, because Google has a
major hub.
Major hub there. And it was all these computer science grads from Purdue. And it was this huge, just tons in this like restaurant, but Purdue banners everywhere. And I was like the guest speaker. And I was like, wow,
Lord,
guys.
what did you say?
Nothing about computers, that's for sure. But it's amazing how wherever you go in the world, you will find somebody who has a connection to Purdue. And I think that's truly the cool part of being, and especially in the college bag.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely taken notes from you on wear more Purdue badging. One, it'll get you out of a bind. People remember or definitely believe you when you're like professor or teacher. They're like, I can see that because you've got the credentials on you, which is helpful. But I don't know how many times, and I'm an aisle seat sitter, and man, do we have some frequent flyer miles these days, of how many times you'll be just at the edge of sleep because you're exhausted and you'll just hear boiler up. And you're like, yeah, it's lovely. It really is. And
That's true.
it never feels far from the Midwest.
Nope.
You talked about persistence earlier. What does that word mean to you? You kind of already talked about it, but anything else you'd like to touch on?
Yeah, never give up.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the whole Boilermaker spirit is you don't give up. You find a way. And I do believe if there's a will, there's a way. And it might be a weird path, and it might not look like a traditional path, but if you want to do it, you can do it. And I think, at least in our department and in the College of Ag, we're encouraged to find that path. And if you have an idea, go for it. And I think that's what persistence to me is. Don't accept the failure until it's really a failure. Because you can fix a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we break some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the value again comes back from the strength in our diversity of the topics that are so deeply researched here, and the level of commitment that faculty, staff have. It's kind of surreal. Doesn't mean academia always lives like the private sector, but it's a really special place, and it is because of that diversity of thought, diversity in what we study, that allows the overcoming hurdles to not seem so challenging. Yes, we persist. Yes, we're resilient, but it comes from the strength of the network.
And you bring up staff. I think we have some amazingly dedicated staff, and what we do, we couldn't do it on our own. We have good people.
Oh, we'd be in jail.
Yeah.
Probably.
So we can't. So we have staff, especially in our department too. That they go above and beyond, and help us with whatever we need to do. They're there, and they sometimes the face
Absolutely.
of what we're doing, right? So it's critical.
What does it mean to you to be part of this community, and why does that make you proud to be part of this Purdue community, part of the College of Agriculture community?
You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I do think, at least in the College of Ag, it is almost a family atmosphere, and our department seems like that for the most part. I mean, people are very supportive of each other. And like I said, that's part of the reason why I wear Purdue shirts when I travel around. I want to meet those other Boilermakers out there, right? And talk to them and hear their experience. And I love when they're like, food science? Because I'll have does that mean you cook? And then I get to have that conversation of what food science really is. So it's just a good opportunity to connect. So I don't know, it means a lot, I think. And just going out in the state, the alumni that we have are amazing.
38,000 living alumni from the
But
College
I think the day of
Agriculture.
giving demonstrates that. Right? I mean, you tell people that and that they just are shocked at how much money can be raised. And that's just because there is that Purdue spirit. I mean, it's amazing.
Because people genuinely benefited from their investment or time here. We're relevant. And I think keeping all three of our missions relevant has to be one of our major focuses.
And I think
because then it makes the return on it just so much more enjoyable and easier.
But I think the administration is very supportive of all three missions. It's not like one is put ahead of the other. It's everything is important.
Right.
You know, it's like all the teaching awards you've received, and it's well deserving. But that's celebrated just as much as any research award you got, or extension award, or So it's, I mean, I think it's excellent.
I think most people, I will say, at least personally, I feel valued here, and that's, you know, this is not a 40-hour a week job. Not, at least I haven't let it be. It feels more like ×2 most weeks. If you look again, when you say yes to a lot of things, and we're pretty guilty of that. But the atmosphere makes it just welcomes it, and it doesn't. You know, if you're having fun, it doesn't seem like work.
Right.
And that's a little cliche, but that's real.
Yeah, it is.
I get a little tired of sitting on a plane.
I was going to say, with
I'm
the
really
travel, it's got to be.
You watch a lot of movies, though. I mean, you can keep up to date on movies.
I binge it out on the plane. A lot of movies. The importance to me is like battery life of headphones. That's how, like, my major benchmark of technology.
For those long flights,
how long is that going to last?
Yeah. What would you say your next giant leap is? It can be personally or professionally.
Oh, my next giant leap.
Remember that time we drove over railroad tracks? That felt like
that was a giant leap.
That felt like a leap.
Yeah.
We were late to a meeting, but that different kind of leap.
You know, I think in the food safety world, I think some of what we do, like, it is preventative, but we're also responsive to what the next thing is. Food is it's changing all the time. And I think what we always have to do is just keep up with those trends and stay on top of that, listen to what the industry wants, what consumer wants, and we have to then modify what we do to answer that demand. So I think my next giant leap is just listen and see what I have to do to help our stakeholders, help our students, and, you know, help the people of Indiana.
Yeah, I think kind of really staying relevant, like, that's key. And it does happen through listening, for sure. But from multiple angles, like you mentioned, private sector, industry, but also the consumer. If you produce something that nobody wants to buy, it doesn't matter. Right. I think, you know, from a research or science perspective, two things on my mind. One is the Food Safety Innovation Lab is a 5-year contract, and I'd love to see that reach 10 years. And you know, I think we've positioned. We've demonstrated we can work in some challenging conditions like a pandemic. We're also the leaders among the innovation labs in minority serving institution engagement. That's probably the one thing that I am the most proud of about what we do, is not only do we focus on gender and getting information to the deciders in developing economies, but domestically, we have made sure that we are bringing along our institutions that are also land grants that may not have historically had the same opportunities that large institutions like Purdue has had. So I'm committed and excited about exploring how to keep moving in that direction with the Innovation Lab. And then the other, we were putting together a big team where there's a lot of momentum building around, you can call it alternative proteins, but my specific interest is in cellular agriculture. Again, I don't see it as competition for commercial or traditional food systems, but yet a new food system. And while a lot of the investment has been done through venture capital, private sector, there is a spot for academia at the table, because you'll have your regulators, you'll have your innovation drivers, but academia has the unique space of sitting in between, where we can explore the safety, we can explore nutrition, we can explore sustainability, efficiency, how we use commodities that we already have. How do we make that a truly viable food system that consumers accept? There's so many questions around that emerging system. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And there's not too many, I think, jobs in the world that allow you to engage with a new food system. So,
Right.
And it's scale too. I mean, we work with emerging food entrepreneurs that,
oh yeah,
they're just starting out to the big industry, but everybody has a place at the table. I think if we're really going to tackle sustainability and making sure that we can feed this growing population.
Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Is there anything else I missed or anything else you want to share with our listeners before we go?
I think still remembering that safety and quality are different, and how you achieve them are different. And if you have questions about that, we're around.
Yeah.
Happy to talk all day about it.
Exactly. No, we just appreciate the opportunity, and we hope any of the listeners reach out to us if they have any questions, or we're a resource.
Wonderful.
And check out what food science is.
That's right.
We'll have some links in our show notes for everyone.
Excellent.
Very good.
Thank you so much. It was such a blast.
Great. Thank you.